Hi everyone. Thank you for joining. I can see everyone's jumping on now. What an exciting webinar. I was going to start with kind of loading the presentation up so you could all see, but I thought I'd give you something like a little special present today that everyone who's joined us live. I'm actually going to do a rapid vitamin D test so everyone can see my personal vitamin D results because there's no point doing a talk about, no, well, doing a webinar about vitamin D if you don't know the host results. So I've got to practice what I speak. So I thought before we begin this presentation and discuss the errors in calculation, let me do a vitamin D test. And so I can show you within 15 minutes what my vitamin D results are. I hope I've been supplementing regularly, which I should have been. So yeah, fingers crossed, this will be good. So what I'm going to do is show you. I'm going to talk you through the steps. If anyone's interested in learning a bit more about this, just drop us an email or contact us on the website. So what I'm going to do is going to clean my finger like this. And then I am going to make, using a one-time use lancet, I'm going to make a puncture in the side of my finger just right here. So it's my left hand and it's my non-dominant hand. By the way, I hope everyone can see me. Can everyone hear and see me? If you could just drop something in the chat so I know that you can all hear and see me. Awesome. Yep. Perfect. Thank you so much. Right. So this is my finger. Oh, that was so painful. No, it wasn't painful at all. Okay. So just going to squeeze a bit of blood out to make sure it's there. Yep. We're bleeding. Hope no one's sheepish here. I'm going to wipe the first drop of blood. And we've now got a nice big drop of blood because it's nice and warm here. And then what I'm going to do is use my little collection device here to pick up this drop of blood. Oh, I get it right. Come on, Dilly, you should be bleeding today. Nice and warm. Clearly, this is just nerves happening here. Okay. Sorry for people looking. I'm just collecting my blood in the capillary, which should be taking up. Just give me 2 seconds. Cool, perfect. So that's my blood collected. And then all I'm going to do is mix this in with the buffer solution, which comes in a little collection like this. And I'm going to insert my blood in the capillary into it like that, click it together, and then to create centrifugal force and mix the blood with the solution. So this solution inside of here is what splits the blood and allows the test strip to pick up the vitamin D. So what I'm going to do is just create centrifugal force by holding it between my fingers like this and just and that's it. That is nice and mixed. Now, all I need to do next is get a test strip out. Sorry, I wish I had a better camera angle so I could show you all this, what I'm doing right now. But there you go. There's a test strip. It looks a bit like I won't say a familiar strip that we all know about. So it looks like this. And then this is my reader, this little cube here. And I'm going to put 3 drops from this into the test strip. So 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to put this is my cassette, which goes over the top of the test strip, which you can't see. Then all I need to do to program this reader is hold this button down for 2 seconds. It's going to display RFID, which is this card here. You tap the RFID, you tap test, and that's it. That's now counting down from 15 minutes. And what that will do is read the test strip, because it will take 15 minutes for the blood to transport down, and then it will give me my test results. So in 15 minutes, our attendees today will be knowing what my vitamin D sample is and what my vitamin D levels are. How awesome is that? So now that's done, let's get started on our presentation. Perfect. Can we all see the screen now? Perfect. Right. Let's get started. Sorry, 1 second. Just give me 2 seconds. Scan screen. Perfect. Let's begin our talk today. Vitamin D, an error in calculation. Whoever's just joined just now, I have just performed a vitamin D test, and you'll be getting my vitamin D results within about 13 minutes. So as we go through the webinar, you'll hear a beeping sound, and when that's present, I'll let you know what my results are. So today, our agenda is going to be going through these processes here. We're going to be talking about our journey as Nuba Healthcare in vitamin D. We're going to talk about vitamin D synthesis, and I'm going to give you a history and a timeline of vitamin D through the ages. And on top of this, I'm going to explain why there's been an error in calculation and why our vitamin D levels are a lot lower than where they actually need to be. And the most important part is I'm going to show you how to optimize your vitamin D levels and your client's vitamin D levels rapidly using testing and calculation to give the right supplement dosages. This is going to be so much fun. I've had a lot of fun putting this webinar together. It's been so exciting. So I'm really, really looking forward to sharing this with you guys today. To give you a bit of background, Nuva Healthcare, we have been researching and educating since 2014. We are currently going for our ISO 13845 and 9001. If you know what this is, it's like a management system to make sure that we're all up to date and everything that we sell and produce has a record of any sorts. We've recently launched our new product, Vitamin D, which is clinically proven to have a 3.2 times rapid absorption and increase in vitamin D levels. So when you take Vitamin D, it works rapidly to increase your circulating vitamin D levels to increase the benefits of vitamin D. We're recently launching 6 new traditional herbal remedies, and we're doing a lot of R&D at the moment now as we speak on H. pylori and on vitamin D. And I put at the bottom here, we should have called ourselves Mavericks. Why I say this is because we've always done things completely different. We're not like a normal company in terms of we question everything. We're advocates for histamine. We do lectures on migraine. We've got webinars coming up on mercury. So it's going to be so much fun and content and information creating out. And if you haven't already, I would recommend following us on Instagram. We put up a lot of our information and data on social media, and we talk a lot about the research that we're currently doing. And if you already know us, this is our portfolio. You've got our vitamin D test kit. This is what I've just literally just done now to show you my vitamin D results. We have the Toxprint range, and if you didn't get a chance to, we did a webinar I think it was last month or 2 months ago on histamine, talking about how it's called histamine overload and not histamine intolerance. This is our vitamin D product. We also have a toothpaste which binds to histamine and sulfur in the mouth. So people with leaky mouth, this can actually reverse it. And then we have Dolovant, which has got a 130 patient clinical trial on migraines and shows that it can reduce migraine days and aura by up to 50%. And then last but not least, Pylopass, which is a product which is very specific to Helicobacter pylori in binding to it in the stomach. So where our vitamin D journey begins. I want to say a big thank you to Dr. Lars von Oleshik Alberheim. He was a personal friend of mine, and he's actually the reason why I've had the privilege of doing this webinar today. Many years ago, he introduced me to the benefits of vitamin D, and it was actually his research that designed this reader here. And Lars was a massive advocate for vitamin D to the point where he was at conferences lecturing in Geneva. He developed the programs and the systems, and he was talking about the importance of vitamin D. And he actually supported us in one of the research trials that we did that we're going to show you the results today in Africa. And as you can see, big personal friend of mine, he sadly passed away in December 2020. But what an absolutely amazing guy who patented this vitamin D testing machine. So big thank you to him. Big thank you for his support. And all the information I'm about to give you today is because of his, genius mind who's gave me this data and allowed me to continue this journey on vitamin D. Vitamin D synthesis. And one of the big questions when we're talking about vitamin D, people get asked is like how vitamin D is processed. And so I thought the best way to do this would be to show you in a chart. And it's interesting. So we have different sources of vitamin D. We have the basic sunshine, which we get in through the skin. It gets absorbed into it. And when it gets into the skin, our body takes it up through our skin and it binds something called dehydrocholesterol. And that's something called pre-vitamin D. So when sunlight hits the skin, it doesn't mean your vitamin D levels are going to go up straight away. And it's quite common when people are sunbathing, they're going, it's okay, I'm topping up on my vitamin D. Well, it doesn't start until it's attached to the vitamin D binding protein. And we've done a lot of talk about the VDPP, and a lot of people talk about the genetic SNPs that are associated with the vitamin D binding protein. And it's very interesting. So the vitamin D binding protein comes in very different forms of names. And so what will happen is you'll see the synonyms there. So if you read any clinical trial papers, and they'll talk about the GC, the VDPP, the GC-MAF, this is all in correlation to the D3 binding protein. So what happens is sun kicks the skin, and this is between 12 and 2. So it's UVB radiation, not UVA radiation. It attaches the vitamin D binding protein, which is transported by the bloodstream into the liver. And then in the liver, it's as cholecalciferol. And then what happens, it goes through a hydroxylation process and it becomes calcifediol. And when it becomes calcifediol, this is also how we do the clinical measurements of vitamin D. So when we're measuring vitamin D, we're actually measuring the calcifediol in the system. And then the vitamin D binding protein then carries it into the kidneys. And then the kidneys, through the next stage of hydroxylation, converts into calcitriol. So when we have calcitriol, that's what gives us all the benefits of vitamin D. So that's literally how the skin works. And it's quite awesome, actually, so that all these benefits come just from the sunshine. But the other way of source of vitamin D is through food and through supplements. And a lot of us who are probably in this webinar today will be taking vitamin D supplements. And if you're not, I guarantee after this, you definitely will be. And so what happens with food and supplements is it's absorbed by the intestines. And then we have these little transporters called chylomicrons. And chylomicrons are all around the body. And they are actually what pull the vitamin D into the adipose tissues and into the muscle. So actually that's what stores our vitamin D. And what will happen, the chylomicrons, as they're transporting that vitamin D into the system and into the liver, our adipose tissues are pulling that vitamin D in because we have loads of vitamin D receptors around the body, which are known as VDR. And that will then enter the liver, where it's then hydroxylated, converted into calcifediol, which is then passed by the vitamin D binding proteins back into the kidneys, where it's then become to calcitriol. So calcitriol is the active form or the pro-vitamin D hormone that we all love and know. This is an excellent picture. If any of you are taking pictures right now, it's a good time you'll see this presentation slide, and it really puts together what vitamin D is. And one of the most important parts to remember is that vitamin D binding protein, because that's one of the transporters that makes sure the vitamin D is pressed around the system. Now, it's interesting when we look at the geography of vitamin D. And in the UK, if you are currently listening in from the UK, one of the worst parts is we're now entering our winter months. And what this diagram shows is the actual sunbelt. So we're being in the UK, we're above the 35 latitude, north latitude. This means it's impossible for us to get any sunshine during the winter. And then you've got, regions that are on the sunbelt and below the south of the latitude as well. And it's basically impossible for us to get any vitamin D during the winter. And even sometimes it can be a struggle in summer. And one of the most important things you should remember is that a lot of people who will I've had it with friends or family walking down the street at like 3-4 o'clock, and they're like, oh, I'm topping up my vitamin D. No, that it doesn't work like that. So vitamin D is only prevalent from 12 and 2 o'clock. And the reason being is that's when we have UVB radiation. And you've got to remember, a lot of people will actually hide from the sun between 12 and 2 because the sun is at its highest point. But this is actually the point that we actually need to be in the sunshine to actually get the UVB rays onto our skin. And so an important rule of thumb that you should remember is if your shadow is smaller than you, you're not getting UVB rays, you're getting UVA rays. And UVA rays are simply just there for tanning. So if you want to get a nice tan, which is what I've got right now, obviously, then yeah, UVA radiation. So we're going to go to a brief history now of vitamin D. And these next pictures and slides that I'm going to show you are, when I saw them, I was a little bit a shock and a little bit of gasp because it was just a history and a real kind of like, I want to use some shining light for me on the history of what is vitamin D. And so if you go on Google, and I would recommend all of you to do this after the webinar, and not now, obviously, because let's be honest, we want to listen to and find out more about vitamin D. Google sanatoriums, and this was an incredible discovery. So over a century ago, in the UK and around the world, there were these places called sanatoriums. They were known as light therapy healing centers. And the Times did a 40-page article on seeking health in the sun. And these sanatoriums were scattered all over the UK. In total, there were 200 sanatoriums where people could go and they could basically enjoy natural light therapy, where you would, and this is not like a holiday, but think of it as like a holiday, and they would go there and they would sunbathe, they would get oxygen, they would do stretching and exercises, and it was a chance to fill the body stores with vitamin D. How cool is that? It's just incredible. And as you go through these pictures, you saw how crucial light therapy was. And these images are from the 1920s. So this is, nearly 100 years ago now. And you'll see this one picture here with one of the national orthopedic hospitals in Brockley Hill. And they took a picture of these kids who were trying to use light treatment, part of rickets disease, looking at how rickets is formed in the system. And these kids were taken to these light therapy centers where they were exposed to sunshine between 12 and 2 and played, and you can see them in their nappies just playing around. And what was even cooler was during the winter months, we'd have these ultraviolet light ray clinics as well. So this is actually one in Bethnal Green. And you see the little metal there, that's actually a UVB bulb made from mercury that they'd inserted into the room. And the family, alongside the nurse, would go into this room and the family would be exposed to that UVB radiation. This is 100 years ago, where people were actually learning about the benefits of vitamin D and actually, getting that sunshine into their system. And then this was really cool. So this is one of two companies called Ajax in London. They used to do massive advertising campaigns in all the newspapers about the sunlight apparatus. And you could actually purchase these ultraviolet lamps, which basically emitted those UVB rays. And one of the funniest things I saw was they used to do a bulb that you would insert into your kitchen. So no matter what whether you were having breakfast or dinner, you would expose that UVB radiation to kind of increase your vitamin D levels. And it just kind of like blew my mind, because these, 100 odd years ago, they were looking at the benefits of vitamin D. And right now, those mercury lamps, I have seen some places talk about UVB bulbs that are available, and some places, condemn them and say they're not, you shouldn't have them in your system. But right now, a lot of the mercury lamps that are used are actually what create your vitamin D3 supplements. So they actually use those mercury lamps and expose it to cholecalciferol, which derives from lanolin, which is sheep's wool. They expose it to those mercury lamps to activate the vitamin D in those supplements that you have. So it just shows you 100 years ago how powerful this treatment was. And then this was very awesome as well. So this was something called heliotherapy and balneotherapy. And what heliotherapy was, that's heliotherapy is sunlight therapy, and balneotherapy was seawater therapy. So as we all know that, the seawater is packed full of minerals, packed full of salt, and that minerals is good for our bodies. Things like magnesium, sodium, potassium, all those are exposed into that seawater. And what they would do at these healing centers would that they would bathe the body in the seawater to remineralize the system, and then put the person in the sunlight to then get the vitamin D into the system. So very cool, right? Just so you know, my vitamin D levels are up now. So if you can't see this, but that's my vitamin D levels coming through. Just to read it out for everyone, I am 216 nanomoles per liter, and which equals 86.4 nanograms per milliliter. So I have good levels of vitamin D. I'll tell you about what these results mean in a minute. Anyway, to get back into it, so this is, these images were from in Ned Hill Hospital, where they were looking at the benefits of sunlight and seawater therapy. And you can see the before and after photo for rickets disease. So this is not vitamin D supplementation or fortifying foods. This is literally using the power of the sun and UVB lamps to actually benefit the body. And you can see with tuberculosis and lesion patients how this young child has actually gone from that image there to here after using the Bainal therapy and the seawater therapy. And if you get a moment, look at the tuberculosis clinics in Switzerland. There were clinics set up in Switzerland after reading these reports in 1921, and they were actually set up for treating tuberculosis lesions with the use of light therapy. So it's a good resource of good images that are powerful, that we can see how the much beneficial sun actually is. So let's get into the timeline. To talk about vitamin D, we must, and talk about the miscalculations and talk about like where vitamin D's come from, we must first understand where it started. And so I wanted to look at these light therapy centers. And one of the most important things was this, we started with Professor Sidney Ruth. And Professor Sidney Ruth was part of a conglomerate of hospitals all around the UK. So you've got like Royal London Hospital, King's College, St Bartholomew's, Charing Cross Hospital, and what they were doing were looking at the radiation protection. So they were looking at UVB lamps and how they affected the system. And what they wanted to do was to understand if there was any issues with getting that UVB radiation from lamps and also from the sun. And they want to look at what was protection, so to make sure we weren't being exposed to too much of it. So that safety was really, really important when it came to vitamin D. And so they set up something called the Committee on Biological Actions of Light. And what this committee did was Sir Leonard Hill actually set this up, and he wanted to look at the benefits of using light therapy on the human body. And so you can see the 1920s, they were really, pushing towards looking at that research behind it. So a lot of the research you see now quoted is actually from the research done in 1922. And then in 1928, that's when this article came about, where I told you about those 200 clinics across the UK who were engaged in using heliotherapy, phytotherapy, and balneotherapy. So you can see they were really, really trying to bring the benefit of the sunshine to the UK population. And then for anyone who's currently pregnant or trying or had children, one of the big things was talking about was pregnancy and how pregnant women, how they are exposed to vitamin D, because obviously the kids the kids were coming out, undernourished in some ways and the malnutrition. And so they were looking at the nutrition that the mother needed. So when the baby was incubating, they thought, how much vitamin D does the mum need to improve the child? And Dr. E. Erbermer, he wrote a piece in the BMJ. So he conducted a 4-year-long study looking at pregnant women, and he started giving them different variations of vitamin D supplementation. And he, at the end of it, said that for the first 7 months, a pregnant mother should be taking 10,000 IUs per day. So she should be supplementing 10,000 IU. Then for month 8 and month 9, the parent should be taking 20,000 IU per day. And the reason why he said this was that when they did this, they were finding less deformities and less issues with the actual child. And he said that we could actually make the doses a lot higher, but to actually, for safety, we should decrease the dosages to put it to 10,000, because that's how much we can get from the sun. So this is 1947. They weren't even testing vitamin D then. So he had done this purely off a 4-year-long study of trying with pregnant women who wanted to get support with their child. And then in 1970, vitamin D testing was established. And that's game changing, because now we could look at all this history and all this data that we produced, and we could test it and say, right, are these people correct? So bearing this in 1970, this is what, 50 odd years ago. So, vitamin D testing was established. So all these people that were talking about light therapy can now have their results proven. So in 1977, there was a 5-year study done by Professor Stamp. And what Professor Stamp did was that he looked at sunshine therapy, and um, he basically said that when you're in the sun, the body can, through the sunshine, from between 10 to 30 minutes, the skin could absorb anything between 10 to 25,000 IUs before the skin started to burn, as in, getting sunburn. And he stated from doing the research, using testing, and I would recommend reading the study, that if someone had an intake of 10,000 IU per day, they could maintain and achieve a blood level of 157.5 nanomole. Sorry, 112.5 nanomole, 20,000 IU. Yeah, yeah, sorry. He said, 112.5 nanomole at 20,000 IU per day. So he said you could achieve a very good level of blood level just from, exposing yourself to the sun or intaking 10,000 IU. So bear in mind, he's recommended 10,000 IU per day. So he's, looked at the research, looked at the data, done his own research, conducted it, and said, right, this is safe level. And then in 1991 and in 1998, there was a committee set up called the Committee on Medical Aspects of Food Policy. And what they did was they actually established the RNI, so the reference nutrient intake value for the UK. And what they did is they said that 400 IUs per day was good for every person to have per day, and it was only for people at risk of vitamin D deficiency. So not like everyone, sorry, it was only for people with vitamin D risk. And so what they were doing were looking at kids who develop rickets. Now, bearing in mind, in 1920s, we've done all this research. In 1977, Professor Stamp said this. They were saying that 400 IUs per day, so they started fortifying foods and fortifying milks with the vitamin D. And then in 2010 and 2016, the SACN in the UK were looking at establishing something called upper level limits. And what they understood was that anything under 25 nanomole liter when testing was linked with disease like rickets, for example, and other other health issues. And based off the research that was done by the Institute of Medicine in America, everyone globally ascertained and ascertained that 600 IUs daily would achieve blood levels above 50 nanomole. And that was based off this research. And this research basically says that everyone in the world, whether you're up in the most northern hemisphere, like you're living in the Antarctica, or below the southern hemisphere, 600 IUs is enough. And so I kept reading this data, like 600 IUs. This is crazy. Like, how can you say 600 IUs when all these professors and researchers from 1920s who didn't have any understanding of testing have said a lot more than that? And then in 2014, this paper came out, and this paper was one of the most interesting piece I ever read. And what Vugelas and Equarid said was that the actual information that these committees had based their data off was actually completely wrong. So my question to you is, now I'm going to present this to you. I'm going to present this calculation to you, and I want you to think about this. What do you think the upper level limit is? I'm going to give you all the evidence, all the research, and what I've found from my personal researching, and you tell me what you think it is. So I'm looking forward to hearing from yourselves at the end of the webinar. An error in calculation. So the Institute of Medicine, the way that they built this calculation was they did a meta-analysis of 10 studies, and these were studies that were above the north hemisphere, so where we wouldn't get much sunshine. So they didn't want to mess around with it too much. They wanted to look at what people are intaking daily. And what these studies did is they provided 32 data points, and you can see them plotted on this graph. And what the IOM said was that anyone between the ages of 1 and 70, they could achieve a 50 nanomoles per liter with dosages of 400 IU per day, so 10 micrograms. And they thought that, okay, if you took up to 50 nanomoles, that is a good level of vitamin D, because they discovered, okay, 50 is where you won't get rickets, and anything under 20 is where you could get rickets. And what they did, they referenced a study, and this was adopted globally. Everyone went, okay, this study must be right. We're all correct. information's there. Everyone takes 600 IUs a day, and every time you take 600 IUs a day, you will keep this level of 50 nanomoles. Not go above it or below it, you will just sustain 50 nanomoles. That's daily intake of vitamin D. Great, no problem at all. That's fine. Let's go for it. That's fine with us. Everyone's agreed to that. It's national, global. Everyone's agreed. And then there's in Equaru. The studies are, by the way, anyone asking where the references are, the references are there in the corner. You'll see the reference with scientific papers at the end anyway. And so they looked at this report, and the first thing they said was the conclusion was incorrect. And when you actually get the original studies that they based their results off, and you looked at the interpretation, they were actually off by a factor of 10. So where they said 400 IUs, it should have been 4,000 IUs. And even then, 4,000 IU wasn't enough. And even 600 IUs, they say, like, if they said that if you took 600 IUs a day, so this is not taking 600 IUs for just in the winter or 600 IUs just for a month. They said that if you took 600 IUs every single day, you would achieve a blood level of 26.8 nanomoles per liter. Bearing in mind, the threshold was 50 nanomoles, and anything for disease was under 20 nanomoles. So they said you wouldn't even you'd barely get above of the smallest amount of it. And so they said to achieve 50 nanomoles at the very least, you needed 8,895 IU per day. And that's every day. That's not, once in a blue moon, that's every single day you need to achieve above 50 nanomoles. And so in 2014, they recommended and they said that the idea for vitamin D should be reconsidered to allow for appropriate public health and clinical decision making. And so this study blew my mind. Every report, every healthcare body mentions these studies, but the calculation's off. So you got to think, where has it led us to? We've got this. Someone's just made a mistake somewhere and it's been taken as fact. So I started looking at all the recommended daily allowances. I went from the US to New Zealand to Australia. I went into Europe, I looked at Germany, I looked at the UK, and what I kept reading was this one quote, and there's these two quotes that kept coming up, and it was excessive vitamin D intakes have been shown to have toxic effects. Okay, that's understandable. I've been told vitamin D can cause hypercalcemia. That's a great statement. Completely understand it. And then the other one was vitamin D toxicity resulted in hypercalcemia, and it caused by increased intestinal calcium absorption and mobilization in the bones. And it was Veith and Jones that were mentioned time and time again. If you read anything on the internet, any clinical trial, any public trial, you go to India. I've done everything. They always mention these two papers. And as researchers and as people that want to look at the evidence, we must read everything, right? And I thought, this really challenged me. I thought I better read these papers because I need to find out what is going on here. Like, what have they discovered that we didn't know? So I pulled up the two papers and I got them. And the thing is, I understand why they did this. I understand why a lot of the committees said this, because the problem is they couldn't get a holistic picture, because what the health bodies were struggling with was we didn't know where the vitamin D was coming from, whether you were getting from the sun or whether you're getting from food or whether you're getting from supplements or whether you're taking from a multivitamin. So that's why they set the guidance. They weren't making a mistake. All they were doing is saying that we can't control every bit of vitamin D that people get. So they set an allowance. Great, completely understand that and completely agree with it. So these studies kept mentioned. And so I took my time out, and if anyone wants these studies, send them out to you because it's kind of hard to get on the internet. I pulled the studies and I started reading them, and I couldn't believe it. I was just, even now, like I was just a bit in shock. And what they said was that the guidance level is not an upper level limit. What they said is that the 1,000 IUs is the guidance level that everyone should take. And this can be taken because you don't need medical supervision. Because the problem with the studies is that they don't know where you'll get your vitamin D from. And if it's supplements, 1,000 IUs enough. You could be in the sunshine, you could be going on holiday, you could be eating fish every day, you could be eating mushrooms. So they just said 1,000 is enough without medical supervision. And this kind of one of the things that Veith said was this definition of this upper level limit is ambiguous. It's based on more on what is, not that on what it is. And Veith just kind of opened like my mind on this. And what he said was, how is it that we've set these guidances when you expose your skin for 10 minutes in the sunshine and you would take a dose of 250 micrograms, which is 10,000 IUs per day, but 1,000 IUs is the limit? And he kind of like looked at it and he said, it doesn't make sense. Why we set this upper level limit when we can naturally get it a much higher? And that's bearing in mind food sources, supplements. That's just saying that this is a much higher amount. And then one of the most key points of this was that the published report suggested that toxicity of vitamin D or hypercalcemia only occurs when concentrations are beyond 500 nanomole per liter. That's how many IUs you would need to really get your blood level up there. And I just couldn't believe it. I was blown away. I was like, okay, Vita said this. I'll read Jones's paper. And by the way, at the bottom here, this is what the influence of the upper level limit on policies and key interest groups. This is what the upper level limit means to them. And this is, really, really important, because what we get to do is we get to see how these different people have had to protect themselves. And I completely understand that, because everyone is worried, because we obviously don't want to cause an effect on someone and give them hypercalcemia. So that's why this 10 microgram dosage has been given across the board. Let's go to Jones. And bear in mind, Jones is the one that everyone quotes when it comes to hypercalcemia. So anytime someone quotes hypercalcemia, it's always Jones 2008, Jones 2008. So I thought, I better read the study. And Jones's paper, the first sentence was, we know surprisingly little about the mechanism of vitamin D toxicity. I was like, I've been quoted hypercalcemia so much. In the last 8-10 years of me researching vitamin D, they always talk about hypercalcemia. And one of the interesting parts of his paper was this: he was looking at the chylomicrons. So do you remember in the early when I showed you that image of the vitamin D in the process and the synthesis of vitamin D? He said when chylomicrons were in the skin and the vitamin sunshine was hitting it, when the chylomicrons were moving around the body, taking the vitamin D that's it bound to into the liver to be processed, our peripheral tissues and our adipose tissues and muscles were actually pulling in that vitamin D. And it was that process of pulling the vitamin D in. He goes, even when you're getting the sun, you're actually not getting 10,000 IU. So your blood level's not going to jump up, because the rest of your body, your rest of your vitamin D receptors need that vitamin D as well. And plus your adipose tissues need to store that vitamin D. So he said, we don't know about chylomicrons. We don't know how much vitamin D we're actually getting from the sun. And then this is the third quote. Oh my God, like, I can't believe it, folks. He said, Jones said this, and this was just blew my mind a little bit. And they looked at all of the animal studies, the human studies, all the anecdotal reports on vitamin D intoxication. And he said, Jones said basically, this threshold value for toxic symptoms is actually at 750 nanomole. And so he said that the upper limit or normal range for humans, so us as anyone, should be 250 nanomoles per liter. And he goes, that is a safe level. So there's 750 and there's 250. So even though he said 750 is where you get toxic, he said to be safe, let's put it at 250. We should say 250 is the safety level. So that's not the toxic level. That's not the hypercalcemia level. Guy, he said 250 is the safety level. That's where we should get. We can get the highest level to, and that gives that margin forever. So if someone goes above 250, we've still got 500 nanomoles per liter to go, and that's what Jones said. And so I guarantee the question you're asking is this: you're going, "Hey, what the heck are the optimal levels of vitamin D?" And if you're not asking, I was asking this. I thought, and I remember I sat down with Lars, and we were sat in a bar in Germany. And I remember when Lars first actually did the vitamin D test on me, we were talking about optimal levels. And it was when he first, like in our infant stages, we were learning about it. And then he sent me a talk he did in at Geneva, and he was talking about vitamin D in health and some of the powerful kind of things that he said to me. And I from his data, I managed to pull in and look at what we know about vitamin D levels. So what do we know about vitamin D levels? So what we do know is that the body does not store vitamin D in adipose tissues until your blood level reaches 40 nanograms per milliliter or 100 nanomoles per liter. So do you know when people say, and I get this all the time, people go, "Hey Dilly, I've had a 2 week holiday. It's been brilliant. 2 weeks in the sun. Don't need to take vitamin D supplements for the rest of winter." Okay, cool. I used to hear that, no problem at all. You've all heard it. You've probably all done it. You've all said it. Even I used to say, I'd be like, "Hey, I'm fine. I don't need no vitamin D supplements. I'll go stand in the sunshine." And what else was important to know was that older skin, as we age and our autophagy and our cells start to die, our body actually produces less vitamin D, so we need to supplement. And we also know that if you go into the sun and you basically get hot and sweaty and you go jump into the shower, you actually rub the vitamin D off. And people with darker skin produce much less vitamin D, so they need to be in the sun for much longer because of the darker skin. And one of the most important things was vitamin D needs cholesterol and magnesium to as a cofactor to help us actually produce it, because cholesterol is part of in the skin is what pulls the sun rays in and binds it to the chylomicrons to transport it through. And one of my clinicians in the team turned around and said, "Dilly, you don't think the problem with cholesterol, the reason why people have cholesterol issues is because they don't have any vitamin D to bind to and utilize, do you?" Interesting question, right? Something we should all think about. And what else we know is that anything above factor 8 sunscreen actually prevents vitamin D from being synthesized in the skin. So those that are wearing factor 50 and going in the sun, you're not getting vitamin D. Sorry, you're not getting it. The other thing we know is the half-life of vitamin D. So we know that once vitamin D is in the adipose tissues, it's got a half-life of 60 days. And when cholecalciferol has a half-life of 4 to 6 hours. So when it's in the system and being converted, if it's still circulating on the system, it only has up that after that 6 hours, it starts to die off, and we need to replenish with more cholecalciferol. And what we do know is that calcifediol, which is the pro hormone vitamin D, has 15 days half life in the body, and that's when it starts to peter off. And then calcitriol, which is the active form, which is what our body utilizes for all the benefits of vitamin D, is around 10 to 20 hours. So now you understand that your reservoir or your sources of vitamin D need to be quite high, because if the half-life is 10 to 20 hours, how quickly do you think your vitamin D is getting depleted? It's not a supplement you can just take in the sunshine and just it runs through the winter. The research has now showed us that we need high levels. So as the half-life is going down, we've got an adequate amount of storage. And we also know vitamin D is a hormone, hence why this idea that it's only for bone health is just bonkers. And I am really sorry if anyone would expected this talk to be about like the benefits of vitamin D, but there's so much research out there and it's incredible. So, if you do want to learn about the benefits of vitamin D, please let me know. I have a hard drive full of vitamin D research papers that a couple of my colleagues have sent over to me. So if you do want to learn about the benefits of vitamin D for mental health, for weight loss, for depression, for even oral health, I actually presented to one of the dentists who actually did the studies on vitamin D and oral health, and his research is actually incredible. And and another point is that we also know is that studies now show us that vitamin D, and if you read all the papers and the studies, it's actually only preventative and has benefits when your levels are above 75 nanomole. So when they're under 75 nanomole, it's not preventative. Bearing in mind, I've just told you here that your body doesn't store vitamin D until you've got, blood levels above 40 nanogram. So the next question becomes, what do you think the average vitamin D level is in the UK? Good question, right? And I'm going to ask this. If anyone here who's joined on today, if you've had your vitamin D levels tested, could I request that you put them into the chat? I'd love to see what people's vitamin D levels are or what they think is a good level of vitamin D. Just from listening to today, it'd be awesome to hear your results and I'll give you my results as well again at the end. So there was this study. Kellogg's, the famous breakfast company, they sponsored a study in 2020. And what they wanted to do was this paper's been quoted quite a lot, was they wanted to look at vitamin D fortification in food. And for anyone who eats cereal in the morning that has vitamin D into it, this was actually part of that study. And what they did was they looked at an age group from the ages of 4 all the way to 65 plus. And what they wanted to do was look at their vitamin D levels from intaking food through, and this was done in June 2020. So they tested all these different patients, all these different participants, and the results were astronomical. Like, I couldn't, it blew my mind a little bit, these results as well. They said that, so from 167 participants at the age of between 4 and 10, 48% of them were below 50 nanomole. Below 50 nanomole. 10% were below 25 nanomole. So they weren't even hitting the actual limit of it. So they were actually, on risk for rickets disease. 9% were over 75 nanomole, and only 4% were over 100 nanomole. And then we go to the ages 4 to, that's not 4 to 10. That should be 11 to something else. Apologies. I got the age wrong. I'll change that later. There are 311 participants, and they found that over 65% at this medium age, I think it was 11 to 19, had levels less than 50 nanomoles, 65%. So as they got older and their vitamin D requirements increased, they were actually much lower. And then we get to the bigger ages, 19 to 64. They found that from the 780 participants from the 1964 age, over 61% were under 50 nanomole, 23% were under 25 nanomole, only 3% were over 100 nanomole. That's very small numbers. And then we go to the ages of 65 plus, bearing in mind the elderly population who are at risk of fall are much likely to break bones. What's that? 88% of them were under 50 nanomoles. So it just shows you that, like, how low those vitamin D levels were. And so I kept looking at this paper and I thought to myself, this is a very good paper, this is giving me a lot of information, but what do we compare it against? So we did a comparison study. In 2020, in September, we thought, let's do a comparison. And what we did is went to an island called Sao Tome Principe. This is off Guinea, off Guinea, something off like a little island off Guinea. If you'll know it as the island that looks like I think it looks like a moon or something. So it looks pretty impressive. But on that map we showed of the sunshine, it's on the belt of the equator. So this has got sunshine 365 days a year. It's a beautiful island of about 200,000 population. So it's very, very small. And their main thing that they do is that they're hoteliers. They have beautiful beaches, and they do a lot of shipping and exportation of like things like fish and fruits, and they do a lot of like agricultural farming because of the hot climate. And you think, what do you think? So this is, talking now. What do you think a country which is exposed to constant rays of sunshine, surrounded by the sea, would vitamin D levels would be? Because I wanted to know. I was so excited for this, and I had to know what this was. And you can see, by the way, just so you know, these were the lovely, incredible nurses that helped us perform the study. They were part of the team, and they were actually pulling the vitamin D out. And you can see me testing. This was on one of the second days. But what we did was we actually performed over 422 we had 422 participants in this study to produce these results. And as you can see, I just want to show you these images, were that even though we're in a sunshine area, a lot of the people that were inside were actually, the jobs that they did was things like making fresh cacao. We had people we had a kitchen that was making fresh bread for the entire hotels in the island. So they were producing all the bread and the flowers and the fresh, any food that they could produce, they were producing in these kitchens. So you can imagine there's a lot of people being inside and indoors. Here's the result. And I'll let you just have a look at this while I drink some water. So this comparison study that we did of 422 participants, what we did is we looked at their dietary intake of vitamin D. Now, bearing in mind, one of the biggest foods eaten in this island was fish. Because of the fact that it's enclosed by the sea, the fishing for this area was incredible. There was so much fresh fish in the water. And they would have mushrooms, constantly, fresh fish, just a little bit of red meat, a little bit of eggs here, there. And we looked at how often they were consumed. And please bear in mind, no participant was supplementing vitamin D, because vitamin D is not a supplement that's there. It's not something that you can go and it's not got a Holland & Barrett hasn't suddenly made it to there. There's no health food store there. It literally was. It literally was. They would. It's all from food in the sunshine. And what we found, do you see these two blue two circles here? We actually found that, bearing in mind these guys are in the sunshine near the sea, the people that worked in the hotels, the people that were working in the cacao fields, sorry, not the cacao, the cacao manufacturing, people that were making bread, people that were working in some manufacturing jobs, their blood levels were under 50 nanomoles, and in some and under 50 nanomoles, and you can just see it there. It was just honestly incredible. So we found that these people who were working, and this is not a case of they're working, 5 days a week and they're taking the weekends off. These guys are literally working 7 days a week, and it's not often that they get time off. It's normally in the evening, because that's how they earn their living to afford for their families. Because these families aren't small either. There were some large families there. And then what was really, really cool was, as he started getting more and more outdoors, there was these group who were like in the farming fields, who were like actually picking and cutting the cacao down, who were in the agricultural, working on banana in the banana factories, working part of like building some of the fruits and vegetables. And these people had anything between anything over 75 and 100 nanomoles. So you saw this kind of like, okay, it's getting more and more further and further out. And then these group of fishermen came, and these people were just brilliant. And I still remember this man. He was like 80, I think 83 or 84 years old, and he turned up, and he was just stick skinny, but like completely ripped. And he actually, his result actually, we didn't get a result from him because his vitamin D level was so high. He was over 250 nanomoles, and our reader can't read over 250. And these people that are working in the sea, now bearing in mind, they are 7 days a week out there in the morning, early morning fishing, catching into the sea, catching the fish, pulling their haul in. These aren't trawlers. These are literally, old school fishing nets that they're pulling into. These guys were above 150 to 200 nanomoles, and there was no health. There was no health conditions. They were fit as fiddles. They were eating, and they would eat fish 7 days a week, and they were really, really high the levels of vitamin D. And now bear in mind, I've just shown you the results for the UK. These guys are in the sunshine, but the people who were lacking in vitamin D, or low level, well, not lacking in vitamin D, but had low levels of vitamin D, were the people that were working inside. So how many of you can say that, during the sunshine, we're all working, we all have a busy, busy jobs. How often do we actually get sunshine during the summer? We had heat waves. We struggled a bit, right? And so these questions get asked all the time. People will come and they'll say, should I test before supplementing vitamin D? How much vitamin D should I take, Dilly? Is there a maintenance dose? What do my little vitamin D levels mean? How often should I get tested? And then the most important questions, Dilly, what should I take? Capsules, tablets, sublingual? Should I go and live in, Sao Tome and Principe for 365 days a year and get sunshine? They're all questions that get asked, right? Because even I was asking them. And I'm guaranteeing you that you're all thinking the same things as well. So let's optimize vitamin D the right way. The first thing we should do is test. And everyone, you should all get tested. And I can't stress this enough, is you should test vitamin D, because what this does, this allows us to see where we are, where we need to go, and when we test again, how we're getting on. And that's really important, because then we can change the dosages depending on what's going on and how we're feeling. And testing allows us to it gives us those baseline values to then increase them. Or if you're overdoing baseline values, is to decrease them. So we now know where testing should start. And as I said, there is rapid testing available now. So you go wherever, go to a laboratory, go to City Assays in Birmingham, get tested, go to Genova, go to anyone you want to get vitamin D tested. We just produced, Lars produced this rapid vitamin D test because what he wanted to do was, at every consult that a patient came in, he wanted to be able to give them a vitamin D calculation and send them on their way with vitamin D, because he said it's the fountain of youth. Vitamin D is the pinnacle point because it relates to so much in the system, from cholesterol to how our mind feels to how our body functions, linking our innate and adaptive immune system. Vitamin D is important. So he invented this 15-minute test, which is available. And by the way, It is Balin's insured and improved. So if you do the training and you're certified by our partners in our, you will actually be given the certification which you can take to Balin's, who will then add it to your insurance. So practitioners are allowed to do this. Step two, classification. What does your result mean? And I can see, as I'm like sat here, I can see the chat kind of going up and people are putting their results in. So anyone who's got their results, that's what your results mean. So this was designed by several different people. Everyone talks about the different levels of vitamin D, but this table tells you what your level, when you get your results, what they actually mean, whether you're critically low, long-term deficient, very good vitamin D, or very, very high vitamin D. I think I said 85 or 83. I'll check them afterwards. So I'm on very good levels of vitamin D. I supplement, I want to say daily, but I forget things quite often, and I forget to take my supplements. But I normally take quite a high dosage of vitamin D, especially because of my ethnic background. But I like to make sure that my vitamin D levels are really, really high, and I have had a lot of benefits from it. And now, everyone, get your phone out. Take a photo of this next slide. I know you're going to get it in email, but take a photo. And if you don't get the slides, you need to take a picture of this next slide. This is how you calculate and optimize and correct your deficiency. So Lars gave this to me, and when he gave this to me, it was hilarious. Like he told me how they created this calculation. It was done by the Vitamin D Council, and this is how they actually calculate how much, when you get your result, what to do with it. And what they do is they look at this and they say, right, we want to get your target level against your measured level. So what you do, actually, sorry, let me start with the facts. So you need 10,000 IU of vitamin D per 70 kilo of body weight to push your blood level up by 2.5 nanomole. So 10,000 IU per 70 kilos to push it up by 2.5 nanomoles per day. So that's your daily increase of it. And so what they did, this is the calculation. You take the target vitamin D level. I normally go anything between 50 to 65. Some people want to go 90. There are people that want to go above that. Everyone, whoever you want, you get your target vitamin D level and you take away what your measured level is. And you get the result in nanogram per milliliter, not nanomoles, nanogram per milliliter. You then divide the person's body weight by 70 kilos, and then you times those two figures together. And then that's how many, and you times that result by 10,000, and that tells you how much vitamin D the person needs to increase them to that correct level. So in this example, you'll see the person's measured level was 29 nanograms, not nanomoles, nanograms per milliliter, and their target value is 65. Their body weight's 80 kilos. So what we would do is 65, the target value, minus their results. Then we do their body weight divided by 70. We times those two figures together, and then we times the 41 by 410 by 10,000, and that gives us 410,000 IUs that the person needs. That's how the person vitamin D the person needs to get to that right level. So this person could go off and they could take 10,000 IU a day, 41 days, retest, and then they could either look at a maintenance dose of 10,000 IUs, or they could increase it or decrease it. It's their choice. But what this gives you also a bit of benefit for loading doses for anyone who's got vitamin D injectables or works with people like Get a Drip or H.Pylori Clinic or even the Spa and everything that I met recently. If you're doing vitamin D injections, you can now give loading dosages based on the back of this results. So to get those vitamin D levels high. How awesome is that? Calculation, we can actually calculate how much vitamin D the person needs. So you can test the person in 15 minutes. So if someone's in your clinic, they come in, get their vitamin D tested, you bring the consult, at the end, you've got the results, calculate out, work out from them, and go, right, here's your vitamin D. Go take this for the next X amount of days. We'll test you in 3 months. That's it. We can monitor, check, and keep those vitamin D levels at a good level. And if you read the data and read the research, you can see how beneficial having good levels are vitamin D. And step 4, how to meet your daily requirements of vitamin D. This is the funny one. I have a couple of friends who are just like, they go, hey Dilly, I eat fish like 3 times a week or twice a week. I eat boiled eggs. I have mushrooms. All the packaging's got, fortified with vitamin D. So when you eat white mushrooms, you're getting 100 grams of white mushrooms, 6.7 IUs. Pink salmon, 520, 22. Swordfish, 666 IU. How many people eat swordfish on a regular basis? Because I don't know. I don't know if I think I've seen swordfish in the supermarket yet. And then boiled egg, 87 IUs. They're really low levels of vitamin D. Yes, they have vitamin D in them, but they're low levels. They're not going to hit. I don't think they're going to hit your requirements. And so, rule of thumb, and this is our rule of thumb. I think if you're in the sun for 10 minutes, you should achieve 10,000 IUs. 20 minutes to 20,000, 30 minutes, 30,000. That is like just a rule of thumb, a bit of information for you. But obviously, that all depends on your age, your skin color, and how much clothing you have on. Because these figures are based on someone's kind of sitting in their like bikini or in their shorts or in a sunbathing suit. But if you want to increase your vitamin D levels rapidly, I'm going to give you all a trick. And if you all go onto Amazon and you can type in lanolin, and there's a couple of like suppliers in there. And if anyone doesn't know which supplier to choose, drop me an email and I'll send you the supplier information over where to buy lanolin from. So vitamin D3 supplements that some of us are all taking are created from lanolin. And what they do, so the way you create vitamin D supplements is you take sheep's wool, you boil it, you take the cream off, that's the lanolin, and then you dry that out, expose it to a UVB lamp, and then that activates the vitamin D and creates the supplements. But if you get lanolin cream, which is also known as nipple cream, and you just smear it onto the skin and just go stand in the sun between 12 and 2, the sun will activate the vitamin D and it will absorb into your skin and you'll rapidly increase your vitamin D. So if anyone's going on holiday, and if you are going on holiday, please send me an invitation because I think I need one as well. And I'll come with you and we'll talk about vitamin D for days, but if you rub that lanolin on, you will actually increase your vitamin D levels even faster and get much stronger vitamin D levels. And it costs nothing, £6-7 for lanolin cream, not even that much, and you only need a spare amount of it. Hot tip for you. So, the question is, you said we can't get enough vitamin D from the sun during the winter months. Let me explain the supplements, because whoever's, all of us are taking supplements or supplements from different suppliers, and if you are brilliant, take as many supplements as you can, and because they will be beneficial and helpful. So you have our normal cholecalciferol and ergocalciferol, and you've got food sources, and as we said before, they're absorbed in the intestines, and the absorption rate of most vitamin D supplements is around about 70%. That's from the trials that have been done. It's around about 70%. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, but 70% is the average amount. And the chylomicrons pick it up into the liver. It's then hydroxylated, put into the D3 proteins, and it becomes calcifediol. And then calcifediol is what we do the clinical measurements of. And then it goes into the kidneys, where then it becomes calcitriol. And then we get all of those beautiful benefits of vitamin D. The other is calcifediol. And calcifediol is the same perspective. It's absorbed in the intestines, carried by the chylomicrons, but it's transported directly into the kidneys, not into the liver. So it's completely missing that step. And then it's activated into calcitriol. And research has shown with calcifediol, there's a 93% 90 absorption rate capacity. And because of it being the active form, it doesn't need that. It takes away that half-life of the cholecalciferol, and it actually increases vitamin D 3.2 times faster. So you get the calcitriol and the benefits of vitamin D that much quicker. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because we launched it. So it took me about 3 years. I was looking at vitamin D supplementation, and then I teamed up with James. He's a colleague of mine, and I met him from the USA. And James had actually been researching calcifediol 23 years ago now. He was one of the partners who actually discovered calcifediol and put it into food. So when you have eggs with, say, fortified with vitamin D, or mushrooms that are fortified with vitamin D, it's because of his research that they actually created calcifediol, fed it to the animals and to the chickens and to the cows to increase the animals' vitamin D levels, so that when we ate the animals, our vitamin D levels increased. But James has kindly given me the support because of my passion with vitamin D, and we worked together to create this. We created Vitamin D, which is been approved, and it's now available from Marine Nutrition, so it's exclusively available. But this is vitamin D is calcifediol, and the reason why I'm saying this is because it's the prohormone of vitamin D. And because it's hydroxylated, it passes the liver to enter the kidneys to become calcitriol. So it's got that activation that much more quicker. So when you're taking the vitamin D, you will get the benefits that much more quicker. And research that's available now has shown that it optimizes the vitamin D levels, as I said, 3.2 times faster. And if you want to read the studies of the research on calcifediol and the benefits and the safety data and how, if we can take it, they're all there. They're all available, all there. You can read them all there. There's more data available. If you do want to know about the calcifediol, please do let me know. And that's it. There's the research papers that I've used for this presentation. This list is not exhaustive. There are more to come out there. And then I've just got one more thing to say. My last thing, and then it's question time. We all know who Florence Nightingale is. She's the founder of like modern nursing in the United Kingdom. And I just want to leave you with her quote that she said, and it really resonated with me. She said, "It is the unqualified result of all my experience with the sick that second only to their need of fresh air is their need of light. That after a closed room, what hurts them most is a dark room. And it is not only light, but direct sunlight that they want. People think the effect is upon the spirits only. This is by no means the case. The sun is not only a painter, but a sculptor." That's Florence Nightingale, 1950. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate listening. If you haven't already, please do follow us on Instagram. We put a lot of content up on vitamin D and histamine and toxic prevent. There is a practitioner support group. There is the direct email address if you want us to email me, email the company or email the team. I'm now going to get to the Q&A of everything. And while we're doing the Q&A, if anyone has any questions for me, ask them now and I'll answer them live now. So let's get to questions. 15 questions for me. Someone's asked, please forward the vitamin D papers to you. Yep, I'll do that. I will send the papers to you as well. So someone's asked, I agree the current supplementation recommendations aim to attain a 50 nanomole per litre level only to prevent rickets. There is a suggestion to increase this national target level to at least 75 nanomoles or even 100 nanomoles. Recent studies have shown that daily dose of 10,000 IU and in some cases even 30,000 IU in the short term are considered safe according to the EFSA panel. Oh, thank you, anonymous attendee. I really, really appreciate that. I thank you for sending that over. That's new information to me. I didn't know that. Someone's asked, is chylomicron deficiency a thing? I'm really sorry. I don't know. I've not looked into chylomicron deficiency, but what I'll do is I'll make a note of it and I can answer that later. Someone's asked, where can we purchase this test? It's available on our website. I will type into the box now. 1 second. The test is available on our website. You can purchase it from there. And someone has asked what my vitamin D levels were. So if you joined us at the start, I did my vitamin D test at the start. So let me just put this out. Sorry, my reader's playing up. I think my result was around about 85.7 nanograms per milliliter. So in nanomole, my vitamin D levels are at this current time is 214.25 nanomoles per liter. That's my current vitamin D level right now. Someone's asked me to please touch on vitamin K to accompany the vitamin D. How much vitamin K per vitamin D dosage? So if my memory serves me correct, for every 5,000 IU of vitamin D, it's about half. So it's about 50 micrograms of vitamin K. that's I know people take vitamin K2 from with for supplement vitamin D, completely fine, and it can have a. I've read some of the data on vitamin K2, and it does have a benefit with stopping the vitamin D from from the calcium calcifying into the blood vessels. But a lot of people don't take the vitamin K because they get a lot of it from food. So I know that's a common thing as well. Someone's asked, what is an optimal level in autoimmunity? So, with autoimmune disease, there are different bases of it. Some people have said above 150 nanomoles, but then I've read other papers where they talk about 200 nanomoles. I think your vitamin D status is completely everyone's is independent. But I think what I'll do is, Joanne, for asking this question, if you don't mind, let me read into it and I'll see if I can kind of pick up a guidance level. But I think anyone with above 150 nanomoles is brilliant. Someone asked, how do practitioners become qualified with the tests you've demonstrated? So you order the test kit, order the test strips, you then go to the link on there for training on our website, and it goes to the Hanawa website where you book in their training course. It's about, I think it's £125, and Paul from their team does all the training. So he explains everything I've explained. He explains the calculations, what vitamin D, the benefits are, and then he trains you up, performs a test with you, and then once you've done that training, you then become certified. He sends you a certificate, you get that, you take it to Balance, it's all been approved. Someone asked, is it safe to get 300,000 IU as a loading dose? Yes, it is completely fine. I have been asked this before. We've had a couple of clinics. If you want to get a loading dose done, I would highly, highly recommend go speaking to either Get a Drip or the H.Pylori clinic. So Get a Drip, the team out there are nurses who perform the vitamin D test, and they actually do. So before they give you a vitamin D shot, they use our QB to test you out, and then they give you the shot. And it's the same with the H.Pylori clinic. H.Pylori and her team are brilliant. One of her head nurses, she's absolutely fantastic. She will give you a loading dose of about 300,000 IUs. So yeah, honestly, completely fine to take 300,000 as loading dose. Someone's asked, what's the best approach for testing vitamin D levels? Does it matter if you're supplementing, or should you stop for a period of time before testing? No, continue taking it, because the problem is if you stop supplementing, then you should stop eating those foods with vitamin D, then you should stop going out in the sunshine. Testing vitamin D just allows us to see where we are. It's not a case that we stop everything to then start taking everything. That testing gives us it gives us a path, and it allows us to understand where our vitamin D levels are and if we're taking the right dose for us. It could be also a really good way for anyone here to persuade your family to go on a holiday. You could be like, look guys, my vitamin D level's really low. I think we need to go on holiday. So don't stop. Just keep taking supplementation, test. You can see if you're taking 4,000 IUs or 1,000 IUs, you can see if your vitamin D levels are still low. That's up to you. In the example you use to calculate, what would you do in terms of maintenance once the desirable level was achieved? Thank you, Teddy, for this question. Oh God. So I take 10,000 IUs at the minimum per day without fail. Like most days, I'll take 10,000. If I've forgot a couple of days, there are days where I'll take 50,000 IUs in one go. And the issue is that if you get to as I said before, vitamin D in the adipose tissues, when your blood level is above 40 nanograms, it stores it. But then vitamin D has a half-life of 60 days. So, and if you imagine if you lived in a country which was really, really hot and you were taking the sunshine in, your skin would be getting anything between 10 and 30,000 IUs. In my personal opinion, I believe 10,000 IUs as a daily dose is enough. I think 10,000 IUs is a good source of start of it. But what I want to say is that if you are going to do that, make sure you're testing. After that, Teddy, what I'd say is test and see where the person's got to after doing your protocol, and then see what they need to do next. But you will get really good vitamin D levels. Someone said, while supplementing 10,000 IU daily, do we need to take extra magnesium as well? Awesome question. If you are taking 10,000 IU a day, you don't need to supplement more vitamin D, but I would recommend you do a vitamin D bath. For those that have if those that have not who don't take vitamin D baths regularly, I we need to have a conversation, and I need to explain to your family why you need to once 1 hour every week you need to take out for yourself, and you need to have a bath. One of the best ways to get magnesium in is via through the skin, and I know Better You produce the magnesium they do. It's impressive flakes. I personally don't. I don't really supplement magnesium internally. I normally get it through my skin. So once every week, I will go into a bath with around about 2 to 4 cups of magnesium salts in there, and I'll lie in there for about an hour. And that's my magnesium store for the week that I personally find. I don't know if anyone knows what a good level of magnesium is, but I find that once a week for me is perfect. Someone's asked, is calcifediol safe to take for people with kidney deficiency? Yes, it is. It's one of the main reasons why calcifediol was introduced originally was for people with kidney issues. They were taking it because it increased the vitamin D levels because the kidneys couldn't process it properly. So yeah, it's completely fine to take with kidney deficiency. Someone said, amazing info. Thanks, Dilly. What would you say the best time frame is for improving status? You've mentioned 41 days here. Where does that value come from, please? I've been using 60 days. Do you think this is too long? No, not at all. So the days is based on the calculation. So what we did was when you let me just quickly pull that slide up for everyone. When I did the calculation here, what I did was that 410,000 IUs was what the vitamin D the person needed to get to 65. So what we did was we got 410,000 IU and we divided it by 10,000 IU. So the vitamin D supplement that the person's going to be taking is 10,000 IUs a day. So 410,000 IU divided by 10,000 gives us 41 days. In your case, it could have been 600,000 IUs that you needed, and we divided that by 10,000. That gave us 60 days. So everyone's number days and everything will be different. Someone's asked, please, can you send the vitamin D papers? I can indeed. What I'll do after this webinar, I will attach all 22 papers plus some extra ones that I have lying around in vitamin D, and I will give them over to Amrita, who will share them with you all part of the slides. And if there's anything you guys want to know, I'm going to put my direct email address into the chat for anyone who wishes to talk to me personally. This is my direct personal email address that you can email me on because I like to talk about vitamin D. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask me, please do feel free to email directly. I will send you the trial papers and I'm more than happy to. I'm not scared to talk about vitamin D. I love talking about it. It's one of my favorite topics. And yep, I'll do that. Yep. Someone's asked, hi Dilly, great webinar. Do you have a protocol for if you ever feel a cold coming on or you are feeling under the weather? Oh, I don't know if I should tell you this, guys. Um, okay, so Lars, when when we were in Germany, my colleague got a cold. It was quite funny actually, and we went to a pharmacy, and Lars said to him, I'm going to share this with you guys, and like I know it will go out to everyone else, but I'll share this with you. But please don't take my like you can take my word on it. But this is what Lars used to tell us. He said to us, he said, if you get a cold or a flu, and you're feeling under the weather quite a bit, he said take 1 gram of vitamin C and 10,000 IUs of vitamin D every hour on the hour daily, and you will be completely cold free within around 1 to 2 days. And I do personally do this. My partner personally does this. My friends personally do it. My colleagues personally do it. If you, hope you guys can keep a secret. It works. It really works. It's what Lars used to teach us, and that's my. There's no. I don't know if there's data around it, but it's what I found worked for me. But that's some information for you. I do what with you may. But yeah, there you go. Someone said, does that mean that if supplementing with the vitamin D, we basically divide the time we got calculating with the formula you have just gave us by three? No, you don't need to divide it more. The IU on the packet is 2,000 IUs. So one tablet will give you 2,000 IU, two will give you four. So if you're taking five tablets, that'll be 10,000 IU. So you don't need to divide it. It's the IU's already on there. So you just divide it by, if you're going to do 10,000 IUs a day, you could take five tablets, but normally they go by half because obviously the increase is much more rapidly, but you can still use it. Someone's asked for children dosages. Oh, children dosages is quite interesting. So, according to the current guidelines in the UK, it's around I think 400 IU's, but it's a bit of a tough one. So you can, if you test a child and you get their vitamin D results, you could try to increase them a little bit, and even doing something simple as 4,000 IU's or 5,000 IU's would be more than enough to kind of bring their vitamin D status up a little bit more. That's probably my personal thoughts on it. But Katie, you asked a question. Do you mind just emailing me on my dealco@nevahealthcare.com? If you could email me, I will try and look into it and see if there's a child dosage I can find, and I'll try and speak to Josephine, who's Lars's daughter, and I'll try and get the information for you. Someone just asked in the chat, what did the scientist Lars pass away from? Lars passed away from a heart attack. It was quite sad thing. Not something he was working a lot of long hours at the moment, and he just passed away from a heart attack. Just one of those things that happened. Died very young, and I miss him dearly. And he was like one of my closest friends and colleagues, and I love the guy to pieces, and I think his daughter's joined us here today as well, and honestly he was an incredible human being. But yeah, he taught me a lot about vitamin D. But yeah, passed away from a heart attack. How much vitamin D supplement do you take, Dilly? I just answered this, about 10 to 20,000 IU's per day. Sometimes I increase to 50. It's not odd for me to take 50,000 IU's and over 2-3 days. I really want to bump my levels up, but like I said, I've got access to this, so I can test my levels quite often if I want to. I normally test once every 3 months. In March I'll test, then in June I'll test, and then September, October. So I'll test every 3 months, more than likely. Sometimes I'll test once a year, sometimes because I monitor my vitamin D levels a lot, and I know when it's too much for me. But that's what I'll try and do, is once every 3 months. Someone said, what magnesium should we take alongside the high dose vitamin D? Magnesium sulfate baths. Personally, I recommend them to everyone. I tell my partner to have a bath every week. I recommend to everyone. On Amazon, you can buy a 25 kilo bag of magnesium sulfate, and I think it's from the Dead Seas. Awesome. And if you want, go to Better You. Their magnesium sulfate, spot on, or chloride, I think it is, but there's a spot on as well. Someone said you recommend 10,000 IU per day. Does that dose apply to dark skinned people as well, or should it be higher given low absorption? Excellent question. Completely fine. If you're supplementing vitamin D internally, 10,000 IU's is enough per day. If you feel like, you know what, I want to take a little bit more, that's your choice. You can do that. I say 10,000 IU's per day, but because you're supplementing it internally, your recommendation is still good. It's just in the sunshine where it's much harder to get in because of the darker skin that we say has to be much higher. Someone's asked, any contraindications of high vitamin D supplementation with medication? I'm really sorry, Yolanda. I don't know about the contraindications. If anyone knows about the contraindications for vitamin D supplementation medication, could they put it in the chat for Yolanda? Or Yolanda, just email me and I'll have a look into it for you. Someone put, does infrared light increase the vitamin D level? I don't know. I literally don't know. I don't know why I don't know that. My mind's gone blank. Sonia, could you please just email me and I will look into that. I'll speak to the float and see what they say. I don't know if you follow us on Instagram. We're doing a next couple of weeks. We're doing a little study with one of the floats who are nearby, who do magnesium floats, and they've got an infrared sauna in their clinic. honestly, the clinic is amazing. Like the team were just brilliant. Their wellness consultants took me in, and I went through the infrared sauna. And we did a couple of Instagram videos there, and I'll be putting them out. So yeah, I'll speak to them, and I'll get the information back, and then I'll come back to you. Does the sunshine need to be on the belly between 12 and 2, or do other body parts work? This is from Louise. Doesn't matter where, it's any part of the skin, face, chest, back. Obviously, the best thing to do is go stark bollock naked into the sunshine and expose all your skin, but try and expose as much as possible that you can around the sunshine, but use that lanolin trick. It's an incredible trick that we can use. Someone's asked, how do you convert from nanomole to liter to nanograms per milliliter? I will show you. So you do, to get from nanogram per milliliter to nanomoles per liter, I'll type it into the chat. You do ngml divided by 2.5, and that gives you the nanomole per liter. And then if you want the nanomoles per liter, nanograms per milliliter, you do nanomole per liter, the result times by 2.5, and that gives you the nanogram per milliliter result. They're just 2.5 either way. Someone's asked, is the loading dose of 300,000 for adults only? Do you have different doses for different age children? Thank you for that question, Kirsty. I will have to look into that. The loading dosage, I think, is dependent on the clinician at the time and what loading dose they give to you. I know some clinics will give 100,000 or 50,000. I think it's all dependent on that. But if you email me, Kirsty, what I'll do is I'll set you up with either get a drip or with the H.Pylori clinic in London, and they can then advise you on what the dosage loan doses for children are. Aaliyah said, I prescribe 10,000 IU D for cancer patients daily, up to 25,000 IU. Is this okay? Yeah, completely fine. Literally can't see any issue in that at all. Just make sure you do a medication check, but yeah, completely fine. No issue at all. I know. Actually, really funny the sanatoriums I was talking about earlier, the ones here, these ones in Switzerland, I think. Don't quote me on this. Don't hold me to this. In Switzerland, they did a lot of work on prostate cancer and vitamin D. It's very interesting research. You should read that on there. That will give you some idea of dosages. Oh, someone's just put something in. Mark, if you wish to contact on infrared sauna, speak to Mark Giver at getfit.com. Oh, Mark is brilliant. Mark is very, very good. If you thank you, Lynn, for sharing Mark's details. Getfit.com do infrared saunas. They do like they do a lot of the saunas and stuff. I would definitely recommend him. Someone's asked, is activated vitamin D better? Do you mean is calcifediol better than cholecalciferol? Yeah, it's essentially, yeah, because it's the next form of vitamin D. You've got to remember that. Sorry, this is the wrong picture. There you go. So cholecalciferol had to go to the intestine, attach to the chylomicrons, then go into the liver first, and then it gets hydroxylated into calcifediol, and we don't know how much is lost by the chylomicrons in the adipose tissues, and we don't know how much is lost part of the hydroxylation process. But with calcifediol, it goes directly into the intestines, attaches the chylomicrons, and because it's the calcifediol, it gets pulled directly into the kidneys, where then it becomes calcitriol. And so we know that we're missing one massive step there for hydroxylation, so we can increase those levels much more quickly. Um, Someone's asked, can you please suggest a vegan lanolin replacement? Oh, that should be interesting. The calcifediol that we have used is from desmosterol, and it is completely vegan. It's not from sheep or from sheep wool or lanolin. It's from desmosterol, so it's not. It's from that. I believe, if I'm correct, it normally comes from algae that we've used it from. So it's either algae or phytoplankton we've taken the desmosterol from. And the other one for vegan D3 is lichen, which is yeast. So a lot of yeast is that's the vegan lanolin replacement. Someone asked, you mentioned Get a Drip, and what was the clinic, please? Oh, sorry, the two clinics are Get a Drip and Our Clinic. Alan, you are wonderful. They do a lot of work over there. Someone's asked, do you have any information on vitamin D protocols for skin cancer? From Danielle Philipson. Uh, Danielle, could you please email me directly and I will send you the research papers I have on vitamin D and skin cancer by itself. I've got a bit of information on there and I'll try and send it over to you. Someone else has asked, is there evidence for absorption of magnesium through the skin? Yeah, there's a lot of evidence through magnesium through the skin. Magnesium chloride and magnesium sulfate. Yeah, Rada, if you email me, I can send you the studies of magnesium. There's quite a few of them. Someone's asked, should we decrease calcium intake while taking higher doses of vitamin D above 10 to 20,000 IU? You're really testing my knowledge here, aren't you? That's a brilliant question. Renata, can I please get back to you on that? I hope I said your name correctly. That is a really good question. Let me speak to Josephine and let me speak to the team, the clinicians, and I just want to find out about that because that's something that came up before. And I know I've answered this, but my brain's gone from talking. But please, could you just email me and I will 1000% look into that and give you an answer to that. If anyone else wants to get that question, please could you email me and I'll send it out to you. And someone's asked, Joanne's asked, is there a practitioner's discount applied for the vitamin D items? So if you buy through Amrit Nutrition the vitamin D, they've got their practitioner discounts. We've got our practitioner discounts on the Nuba Healthcare website, but the vitamin D test strips and the reader and the device, that's just one set cost. They're not practitioner discounts, it's one set. The reader's £399 and the test strips, you get them in a lovely box like this, and you have 25 of them of these test strips and all the different collection bits, and that's £487.50. So it's about £20 per test, and then you would charge a client anything between £35 to £40 per test. So you're making around about 50% margin on the test strips to your clients. Right. That's all the questions answered. I think there are a couple of questions in the chat that I'm just going to look through. Someone's asked that the nanomole per liter, the conversions should be there. Okay, I think that's all the questions. I've been through all of them. Brilliant. Everyone, thank you so much. I have enjoyed this webinar. I've enjoyed putting it together, and a lot of love for the Amrita team who helped me, supported and put this webinar on. And please do just email us, Instagram, YouTube, whatever you want. Send me smoke messages. And by the way, my door is always open. If you ever want to visit our offices in Coventry, drop us an email. I'll be more than welcome to have and host a couple of practitioners down here. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and have a lovely, lovely evening. Thank you, everyone.